Alright YouTube, after a very long break, here we are, back again, with another episode of
The Analogue Masterclass.
With yours truly, John Ryman, and sponsored by Sagres Cerveja. Anyway, what's on the menu today? Well, today we've got the Boss Dr. Rhythm DR55. Manufactured in about the early 80s, 1980, 1981, 1982. That sort of thing. So we're talking now, we're getting on for what? 30, 35 years old. This box is old, but the good news is it's readily available. And as you've probably figured out if you've watched any of the past videos, we like to concentrate on boxes that are available and cheap. You're probably unlikely to see a full-on review of a TR-808 or a TR-909. Principally because there's a million other videos you can go and watch about these boxes. And let's face it guys, they've been used a million, trillion, gazillion times. Okay, so I guess we ought to stop this. What you're looking at here is a modified Boss, okay? It's a modified DR55. We're going to get onto the modifications a little bit later in the video. What we're going to concentrate now on is data input and the sounds themselves, okay? Now, like a lot of analog equipment, a lot of these boxes, you'll get them and, you know, you press start, it works, you know, but you'll go to another function and it doesn't work. I don't quite have that problem. What I've got with this particular unit is typical of virtually any analog piece of equipment that's 30, 35, 40 years old. The interface where you interface data is on its way out. Now, what does that mean? Well, on this particular unit, you've got only really two interfaces. You've got this and this. Yes and no. Black, white, whatever. That's what you've got. Okay, but these little touch buttons, just like on the 303, are the first things to go. So if you're going to get one of these units, and they are pretty cheap, we're talking about probably less than 200 bucks. And in my opinion, it's just an excellent box, but for minus $200. It's obviously completely analog, it feels completely analog, it sounds completely analog, and with a little bit of work on this box, you can get a really great sound out of it. Okay, so what we're going to do first of all is we're going to attempt to write a pattern. First of all, switch this onto right. Can you see the light illuminating there? Okay, so we're in write mode. That doesn't mean that we've erased the previous pattern. Now there's 4 elements that you can choose from. You've got kick, snare, rim shot, and the hats. Quick word about the hats, they're fixed. When I say that they're fixed, that means you can only play solid 16th notes or solid 8th notes. That's it, or off. 3 options, I guess. 16ths, 8ths, or nada. All right. So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to slip this on. We're going to try and write a new snare drum. So what I've got to do first of all is I've got to erase the previous data. Okay, so the light illuminates again, indicating that you've done 16 steps and you've reached the end of 1 bar. Let's check by flipping it across to play. Okay, we're minus a snare. Excellent. So now we're going to go back onto right. We're going to flick it over to the bass drum selector and we're going to do the same process. Again, lights illuminating, indicating that we're at the end of the bar. Flick it onto play. Now all you can hear is the fixed hats. So if I flick this off, which is the hi-hat selector, we've got a blank pattern. Right, now at this point, I'm going to need a screwdriver because what I've got to do, apart from light my J, is show you the modifications of this. Now, the modifications I've done on this DR55 are only on the kick. I'm not a big fan of just modifying for the sake of modifying. In my opinion, 95% of modifications really don't do much in the form of tone. Might give you more options, but does it actually make the tone that these very, very proficient Roland engineers spent months working on? Answer, probably not. You're probably not going to get that 808 snare to sound any better than what the Roland engineers could. Alright? The same applies to this unit. Now, the problem with the DR55 is it's got a very, very weak kick drum, which you might be able to hear right now. We're about to fix that. Right, you have to actually hold this up. Can you hold that, hear that noise? That horrible noise? That's the sustain. Okay, and that's the pitch. So obviously, the modifications I've done is the pitch and sustain. And I've got these two tiny little inputs, which are very, very difficult to maneuver. So we're trying to get a longer 808-ish type tone out of this box. Slightly longer. That'll do. Okay. So there you go. You can get quite a different set of, well, to be honest with you, you can get a completely different tonal palette just by modifying the decay and the pitch of the oscillator. Now, as far as I'm aware, and don't quote me on this, you've got two oscillators. You've got basically a white noise and that does the snare and the hats, and the other for the kick. The most outputs you're going to get from this is 2. Okay? So I didn't bother. I didn't see the utility in doing it. Okay, let's stop that now. Let's stick it onto right, and let's get the snare in. Check the pattern. Now you'll notice that kick sounding radically different from what we had a minute ago. That's the mod. Another problem with the box is the balance. It hasn't got a very favorable balance between all of the elements, kick, snare and hat, mainly because the hat is too loud. So you've got this hi-hat drowning out a very cool snare and kick. The way we're going to get round that is by using the accent to balance out the sounds. Now all you can do with this accent is accent the whole kit. Okay, so if you put an accent on the first beat, you're going to be accenting the kick and the hat. No problem. Well, we're not done yet. We've still got to get the rim shot in. Now we all want to hear that rim shot because it's an excellent sound. It's one of the best sounds in the machine. So let's see what we can do. And that's just just me just tapping random buttons on the rim shot there. But it's a complete copy of a CR78 sound. I mean, in many regards, this box is exactly like a CR78 in terms of tonality. A lot of the sounds are very, very similar, including the snare and this rim shot and the hats. If I talk about where, you know, you're likely to have heard this before, obviously you've got early Model 500, early Depeche Mode. I've heard it on quite a lot of, I guess you could say, European new wave stuff, 80, 81, 82, cold wave, I guess it's called right these days. So it's kind of one of those boxes that people and bands picked up as their first drum machine. I know Depeche Mode used this as the first drum machine. That's the sort of sound you're going to be working with. It really is, in my opinion, a great sounding box. So we've got all the 3 programmable elements in. Let's get the key element in, the hat, and let's see what the balance is like. Okay, now for me, straight away, the only thing that's really wrong here is the snare balance isn't quite right. So we're going to stop now and we're going to write in the accents on the snare to increase the snare volume. Genius, eh? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Should have got it then. Now, tonally, there's the accent off, there's it on. And I want to hear about there. You've also got on the unit a tone, effects, the whole kit. Now, what you normally would do with a unit is program another pattern, because you've got 2 patterns on each one of these dials, well, dial settings, which goes from 0 up to 8. You've got 16ths and you've got 2 12th pattern, 12th note pattern selectors here. So what you've actually got is, I guess, a possibility of 16 patterns. Now, what you've got to do is you've got to get your main pattern A and B programmed onto 1 and your fills programmed onto 2 and 3. So as the unit's actually running, you'll be flipping the dial like that. That's all you've got to do to flip onto a fill. So realistically, if it's running live, you can get 2 patterns plus a fill. Okay, so to demonstrate that, another very cool thing about it is, like the CR78, it goes straight into this synthesizer right here. Let's move this thing. Okay, so if you've got a Juno 6 or a Juno 60, this is a great companion. Now all you're going to be able to do is synchronize the Juno 6, the Juno 60 or the Jupiter 8, anything that takes DCB basically, or clock input, and you're away. But that's all you can do. So in other words, you cannot get an internal sync into this. You can get this to sync to another synthesizer and record those 2 parts and get your drums and say your bass down more or less live. Another very cool thing you can do with a DR55 is you can sequence. And you're like, well, how the hell does that work? Well, the accent is a separate input here. Okay, so as you know, we've got bass, snare drum, rim shot, and accent. When you input the accent data, say for example, we inputted just 1 accent at the beginning of the bar, 1 note, 1/16. What we can do is, if we hold our finger down on a Jupiter 6 or a Juno 60 note, that will trigger that note that we're holding down at the same time. So if you've heard any New Order stuff, particularly that Blue Album movement, the way that they're doing it on that particular album, because don't forget this is long before computers, is this is doing the drums, plus it's also sequencing another kick underneath the kick they're using. And the way they're doing that is by using the accent. So the accent is spewing out boom, 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 or whatever. And the Juno 6 is playing that back in perfect time. So that's another way you can get you can get at least one more voice out of this unit, because you could set your synth up to a percussive element and bang, away you go. So that's how they did that. So, okay, that's about it for this episode, guys. I'm going to include a few minutes of a track, and we'll be back soon with another episode. Stay tuned. Bye.